What does personal greatness look like in the 21st century? Now, the answer to that question that you'd give would probably be informed by a lot of different things. What are your religious beliefs? How do you define success? What does it look like for you in today's world, thinking about technology, AI, all the changing landscape that we live in? What does it look like to be successful? What does it mean to be great? What does it mean to be excellent at life? Not just at one individual segment of life, but in your life as a whole. That is what seeking excellence is all about. It's about answering that question. It's about my journey to answer that question. Just recently, I did a podcast going through my entire life and detailing how when I was 15, 18 years old, I was at a loss of what it meant to be a good man, what it meant to be a good Catholic, what success would look like in my life, especially as somebody who's coming from a broken home, dealing with basically a drug addiction and being addicted to a party lifestyle and being far from God and just not knowing what direction to go in next. I really worked hard to find out what I thought success meant and what it meant to be a good man, what practical holiness looked like. Not just thinking about religion as far as being in religion class and kind of vaguely learning about the Bible and things that felt to be very distant and kind of easy to think about because they didn't challenge me as a person. They didn't push or change or challenge the way that I felt that I had to live. It was easy to think about those things and to get sucked into just perpetual philosophy and deep thinking. I think you see Jordan Peterson is a good example of this as somebody who now is being pushed to say, well, are you Christian? And he's like, I don't know. I never said that I am. And it's like, I'd rather think about what does it mean to say when somebody asked him, what do you believe in God? And he said, what do you mean by do? What do you mean by you? What do you mean by believe? And what do you mean by God? It's actually very tempting to have this guise of intellectualism that prevents you from actually thinking about practical implications of things that are pretty obvious. You know what the question, do you believe in God, means. And if you say yes to that, then you start to define what God it is that you believe in. If you say you believe in Jesus Christ, you say you believe in the Bible, you say you believe in the Catholic Church, let's say, or you at least believe in the teachings of the Catholic Church. I don't know if you believe in the Catholic Church, but you're a member of the Catholic Church and you want to be that because you believe that the Catholic Church is the fullness of the faith. Well, there's implications to that. It actually means something. If you say that you believe that masculinity, good masculinity, virtuous masculinity, is courageous, is strong, is powerful, is also gentle, kind, and loving and patient, well, then that actually demands that if you're striving to be a good man, then you're going to actually try to do those things, try to emulate and embody those virtues. As the host of the Seeking Excellence podcast, it is my hope that I will be able to help you along your journey in answering that question for yourself, as well as giving you practical tips to help you to achieve that goal of becoming personally great, of striving for excellence in every area of your life, giving you some frameworks, some tips, some habits, and things that will help you to actually achieve that and fulfill your potential in this life. If you're interested in that type of content, if you're interested in learning about practical holiness, practical excellence, personal growth from a Christian lens, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow along on Apple or Spotify, where you'll be able to get more content aimed at helping you to do just that, to become the man or woman that God created you to be. In this episode today, I'm going to be laying out my framework, my life philosophy, what I think the life of excellence looks like in the Western world in the 21st century, with all that we have available to us and all the challenges and adversity we face in actually living out holy lives, virtuous lives in our modern world. So without any further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, so just a couple weeks ago, I released an episode about my personal journey, my personal testimony, coming from being my dad's seventh kid by 5 different mothers, broken family background, seeing a lot of divorce and brokenness in my life, and also just seeing financial struggles, seeing a lot of people struggle with being severely overweight in my life, seeing broken and really toxic relationships across the board, seeing people struggle with mental health and all the different areas that now I deem as most important areas where I think we should strive for excellence. I saw mediocrity, or honestly a lot of ineptitude and just even like apathy towards these really important areas of life. And most importantly to me, I saw the impacts that they had on these people's children. I saw the impacts that they had on society as a whole. I saw the impact that it had on their life and their happiness, their joy, their peace. And I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want it for my future wife. I didn't want it for my future kids. And so when I was getting into college, the big thing on my mind was, how do I become the man that God created me to be? Who did God create me to be? Who do I want to become? What does that even look like? What type of characteristics and traits and habits do I want to have as a central part of who I am as a man? And so I started to look at that and think about it and really pray about it. And I came up with this kind of life philosophy, which has birthed into, grown into Seeking Excellence now. And it has, grown into this podcast, speaking events, coaching program, an online community of people who are striving actually to be great and be great from the Christian perspective. Not just isolated greatness to say, I'm going to go all in on my career, avoid having a family, and live life on my own terms. Not that kind of stuff. There's plenty of things out there for that. There's plenty of personal growth people who are focused on you do you, be happy, and make as much money as you want. Not just focusing on physical excellence to say, I'm going to be in the best shape that I can possibly be in. And then I'm also going to sleep around and not really care about being financially successful and things like that. I see these all over the place. People who are financially successful, but have been married 4 or 5 times. People who are in great shape at the gym that I go to. I see them multiple times a week at the gym early in the morning, but they have no career direction. They have no aspirations or any type of excellence in that area of professional life or in their financial life. You can see this across the board. You can also see people who are very devout in their spiritual life, but don't care. They're apathetic towards their profession or making money. And they're also apathetic towards fitness, towards being intentional in relationships, all these other things. And so seeing that across the board, that was kind of the next level. I'd seen a lot of people who were inept and just kind of bad at all these different areas of life. But then the next level that I saw was I started to see people who were kind of mediocre in a lot of areas and had excelled in one specific area. They chose one kind of class. I think of it as kind of a GPA mentality. So when you're in college or high school and you have a GPA, that's your grade point average of all your different grades. You can't just say, I'm going to excel in math, but I'm going to neglect history. I'm going to neglect science. I'm going to neglect literature class. And so I have D's in all of those, but I have an A in math and think you're going to have a good GPA. No, you're still going to have a 2.0 or maybe less than that, a 1.5, even though you have a 4.0 in one class and you have a 1.0 in all your other classes, that average is going to be brought down pretty low. That's what I think a lot of people try to do in life. And I think that God has given us all these different things. He's given you a mind. He's given you a body. He's given you a heart, feelings, relationships. He's given you a professional life, a little V vocation that you're going to be living in. And maybe you're in high school or college, you haven't figured that out yet, but that's still going to be coming down the pipe. You're given money to steward and manage well. There's all these different things that you are given, you're gifted with by God. You're given a soul. I forgot the most important one to cultivate and develop into sainthood. And so we have all these different aspects of us that God has given to each one of us. And we read in the Gospel of Matthew, I love the parable of the talents, and where God challenges through this parable, you see this very demanding master who gives these talents to his stewards, and he goes away for a trip and he comes back and he sees that one has doubled from 5 to 10, one has doubled from 2 to 4. And the one that was given 1 talent went and buried it in the ground. And he just sat on it. And he said, oh, I didn't want to lose it. But he just kind of became apathetic. He was inept. He didn't want to be excellent. He didn't want to risk. He didn't want to try. All because of his fear of failure and fear of disappointing this guy. And the guy was most disappointed. The master was most disappointed because he's like, you didn't even put any effort in. You didn't even really try. And how easy do we have it in today's world? In so many ways, it's easier than ever to be great. But in other ways, it's very difficult. And I recognize the challenges, but what's not helpful is to come here and just lament, to come here and complain. That's another way to get popular, I think, online. It's either you're controversial or you give people stuff to complain about and meet them in their mediocrity. I don't want to meet you in your mediocrity. I want to help you to recognize your mediocrity and pull you out of it, help you to get yourself to take ownership of your own life and where you're at, to create an intentional plan to get out of that, and then use your courage, your inner strength to actually, in combination, obviously, with the grace of God, to build a life that you're going to be proud of, build the life that you dream of, that you desire to actually have. So often, I think people actually push away their desires because they say, oh, well, I don't think God actually wants me to make money, but maybe you're just lazy. Maybe it's not that God doesn't want you to make money and work hard. Maybe it's just that you're lazy. Maybe it's not that he doesn't want you to sacrifice and say no to some of your desires for quick spending and buying cheap stuff and buying crap you don't need. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's not actually that God doesn't want you to be a good financial steward. Maybe it's not that God wants you to work in some job you feel comfortable with and feel like you have good job security. Maybe he wants you to actually take a risk and do something that would have potential to be really great and outstanding. That's all very possible as well. So often we can cover up gluttony or apathy or sloth or cowardice with this idea of charity or a love for poverty or these things that we're not even actually committed to, but we're just afraid to do anything that's going to push us towards greatness. It's going to challenge us and make us uncomfortable. So as I mentioned earlier, I saw this. I saw how this affected people's lives. I saw how it affected their self-confidence, their self-worth, their view of themselves, their self-respect, which I think is the most important of all of those things. And you can't manufacture confidence. You can't manufacture actual peace in your life. You can't manufacture joy. The only way to get those is they're fruits of the Holy Spirit. So it's by cooperating with God's grace and God's plan for your life. When you're doing that, you experience the fullness of life. And once I got a taste of that, guys, I couldn't let it go. Once I got a taste of what it looked like to actually have a prayer life, to live life with the Lord, to challenge myself through Ranger School and Airborne School and platoon leader deployment to Afghanistan in the 82nd Airborne Division, and challenging myself in sports, in my career, challenging myself to overcome the fear of getting married and duplicating the things that I saw growing up, challenging myself to overcome the fear of having children and duplicating the things that I saw when I was being raised as a child. All those things, all those fears, overcoming that and getting to taste the fruits of it, even though it's difficult, even though it is hard and it's harder than you imagine. And a lot of times these things take longer than you imagine. Still getting to stand there with my Ranger tab on, getting to hold my son now and see him emulating me, getting to see the life and the career that we built, taking my family on vacation, all these things. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. And I just saw in my life that there was no role model that I could look to for kind of this well-rounded, excellent life. And so I wanted to create something, first and foremost, in my own life that I could be that to other people, where a young man could look at me and say, man, that guy has a good family. That guy's serious about his faith. That guy strives to at least be serious about his fitness. He reads and is a lifelong learner. He's wise and growing in virtue. All these different things that we could do, and he could look at and say, man, I want to be like this guy. I want to go to that guy for counsel. I want to go to that guy for advice and to learn from him so I can try to create a similar life in my own life, in my own world. And that was my dream. That was my vision for my life. And so that's what I've strived to do. And I make decisions that hopefully align with that more often than they don't. And I saw this gap, and that was really the kind of foundation for wanting to start a platform like Seeking Excellence, where we could have online community, coaching, content that helps people to do that and gives people an example to strive after, as well as guest interviews and things like that that help people to see new ways of how we can live some of this stuff out. And so just to give my framework for Seeking Excellence, I now view 6 pillars of excellence. I used to say 7 pillars of excellence. So if you've been around for a while, I've now kind of wrapped social up into mental, but I'm going to talk through all of that. But you have mental, emotional, physical, financial, professional, and spiritual. I think of these 6 pillars kind of as like a tent. In the middle of the tent is the longest tent pole, of course, right? Kind of think of like a circus tent or something like that. But you have the longest tent pole in the middle that holds it up at the very center. And that is the kind of pillar, because without that one, they all fall out. It's the kind of central pillar. And that one is your spiritual life. If you only could succeed in one thing, your spiritual life is by far the most important. If you're striving for holiness, for virtue, then none of the other stuff really matters. Whether you're fat or skinny, whether you're rich or poor, whether you have good relationships or everybody has abandoned you in your life, your spiritual life, your relationship with God is the number one and most central thing in your life. And it should fuel all the other things. It should fuel your excellence and your drive for excellence, the way that you approach excellence, the way that you handle adversity in all the other 5 pillars. So all the other 5 pillars surround the spiritual one. Spiritual excellence, this is another thing for me that was really big when I was coming up with this kind of life philosophy and style of living, and this rule of life. Is when I was growing up, I felt like you couldn't say, oh, this person's a good Catholic, this person's a bad Catholic, which is good and fine if you're trying to be non-judgmental and inclusive. The problem with that is when you have a young person that's trying to say, well, what does it mean to be a good Catholic? Or even an older person, say I'm 50 and I haven't been to confession in 30 years. And I've been in and out of my faith and just not really taking it seriously. Well, when I'm coming back and I say, well, what does a good Catholic look like? It's easy to see if I'm a basketball player, what's a good basketball player look like? It's easy, I work in sales, to say, okay, what's a good account executive look like? You can tell by the numbers, depending on what company you're at, what are kind of people hitting, who's kind of in the middle of the pack and who's on the higher end. What are their activities and the things that they're doing that are helping them to reach that level of sustained success? But in the Catholic world, it's like you can't say it. We obviously will canonize saints and say that those were the best Catholics, but we don't have any good criteria for saying, like, what does it mean to be a good Catholic? Well, this all changed for me when I read 4 Signs of a Dynamic Catholic by Matthew Kelly. I felt like this was the first time in my life that I had actual guidance, actual guidelines, and a kind of a measuring stick to say, okay, Prayer, study, generosity, and evangelization. He says that those are the 4 marks of a dynamic Catholic, which is kind of this above average Catholic, this Catholic that's really getting after it, that's really contributing to their parish, really striving for sainthood, all those types of things. Then he started to give kind of frameworks underneath each one of those categories to say you should be striving to pray, let's say 15 minutes a day, striving to evangelize, even passively, offering somebody a book recommendation, sharing a YouTube video or podcast that they might find helpful, those types of things. We should be generous, not just with our money, but of course with our money, but also with our time, our energy, and our talents. And then you have study. Are you actively trying to learn more about the faith, or are you just kind of stagnant and complacent with what you currently know about theology, about church teaching, about God? And so all of this was really helpful for me. And I finally have this framework. And I'm like, okay, this is helpful, but it's only helpful in this area of my life. What does it actually look like ultimately to be a good husband? What does it look like to be a good father? What does it look like to be a good friend, to have a good emotional intelligence? What does it look like to have a strong mental health, mental toughness, strong intellectual life? What does it look like to be financially successful, to be financially excellent, professionally excellent? That's obviously going to kind of vary vocation to vocation in your job, different career fields, but there's also kind of some general principles that you can apply to that. And so I started to kind of learn about these different things and wanted to pursue excellence in all these areas. So I love that framework. And what I basically did with Seeking Excellence was not just create the 6 pillars, but also create subcategories under each one of them where I could score and kind of track my progress in each of those areas. Let's take physical, for example. So physical excellence is going to have 3 primary areas in my world. I consider it to be sleep or rest, exercise or fitness, and then you have nutrition. And so what you're putting into your body, what you're doing with your body, and how you're resting your body. And so this includes things like active rest, stretching, those kinds of things. Just being active, living an active lifestyle, being at the target weight that you want to be at. Obviously, are kind of subcategories of your kind of overall health and things like that. And so all of these are also very intertwined. Your nutrition is going to affect your sleep and your fitness. Your fitness is going to affect your sleep and is going to be fueled by your nutrition. And then your sleep is going to affect how your nutrition actually takes to your body and the level of exercise you're capable of. And so all of these things are intertwined. You can see in the physical pillar. It's also true at the larger scale that your physical life and what you do with your body is going to affect your soul. It's also going to affect your mind. One of the biggest indicators of mental health is if you're active. Exercise releases endorphins and helps you to have better mental health and lowers the likelihood you're going to be depressed or anxious and things like that. You also have your physical life is going to affect your marriage. You've heard many stories, I'm sure, of people who have let themselves go once they get into marriage and they gain 150 pounds and lose, some of their sex drive and just the appeal that they have to their significant other, their spouse. So you have all these different areas of your life. If you have no physical discipline, you also are probably going to be eating out more often, which is going to be a high financial cost. And you're going to see yourself being less disciplined across the board when you lose discipline in one area. Discipline is a tide that rises all ships. And so you see that as you grow in discipline in one area, it's very easy then to translate that into others. It's not automatic. Just like courage, I've seen people who are very courageous would run into battle and jump out of planes, but wouldn't pray in front of their spouse or their family. And so courage, it's easy. You build the muscle, but you still have to kind of use it in a different way. Just like you might use your chest, but if you're only doing bench press ever, then next time you try to do push-ups, you're not going to be as bad as somebody who does no exercise, but you're also not going to be a push-up master. You see this a lot of times with like arm wrestling. There's a specific way where you see these big bodybuilders that come up and do arm wrestling. It's like, if you don't arm wrestle, dude, you're probably going to lose to somebody who's half your size that arm wrestles all the time. And so you still can build up the muscles, but translating them to other things, it does still take some discomfort and time and effort. And so thinking about that, all of these are intertwined. I tell people, I say, your soul, let's think about your soul and think about the other 5 pillars. Does God care or have a say about what you do with your money? Yes. What about your work, your vocation? Yes. The church has a lot to say about that. We have a feast day called St. Joseph the Worker on May 1st, where we talk about the goodness of work. St. John Paul II has written some beautiful reflections on the dignity of work. Think about your body, the things you do with your body, obviously, chastity, gluttony, all these different things. Then you think about your mind. Does God care about what you do with your mind? Does he care about what you believe? Yes, absolutely. We have dogmas in the church. There's also certain political beliefs that we ought to hold. There's societal or cultural beliefs, things like being pro-life, things like supporting marriage between a man and a woman. You can think about your relationships. Does God care if you're a terrible husband, father, friend, all that? Yes, of course. And so You see how all of these are going to affect your soul. Your soul is also going to influence and affect all of these things. It flows in and out. But now I hope you're starting to see why this GPA mentality is so important, because you can't just choose, I'm going to excel in one area and think that I'm going to actually isolate it from affecting the other areas of my life. It's all going to matter. Now, it feels like a lot. I know this can be overwhelming. The Seeking Excellence lifestyle can seem overwhelming to say, wow, Nate, I got to be great at all these different areas. The answer is yes. But again, you're striving for a high GPA. This doesn't mean you have to be an A plus in every area. We're looking to make Dean's List here, to make the honor roll. We're not looking to have a 4.0 at all times. So just take a deep breath and let's talk about this a little bit more in detail. And so thinking about different stages and stations of life, I think life has seasons. And so you have to work with the seasonality of life. Tony Robbins has some great reflections on this, where he talks about winter, spring, summer, and fall. Fall is where you harvest, spring is where you work hard, summer is where you kind of wait and you get tested, and then winter is kind of barren. It's kind of this difficult time. And so he talks about the 20-year periods of your life, basically 0 to 80, as having different seasons. But you also can think about the seasons throughout the years, or even just times of parenting, whatever. I think about this, especially when you have a new baby. You're kind of born into wintertime. Nothing else really happens. You're kind of just stagnant for a little while. Then you get into kind of this springtime season, especially when you have one child. You can think about this really easily, where the baby is now maybe sleeping a little bit more through the night, and they're a little bit stagnant. They're okay being set down by themselves. They don't need to be held all the time, and they're not yet eating real food. It's a little bit easier to kind of manage and navigate. And then you go through this kind of summer and testing time when you have like a sleep regression. And then you get into this kind of fall time, over time, where you're actually really having a lot of fun. They're walking, talking a little bit, and things get really good. And you're kind of just reaping the benefits of dealing with the difficult seasons that you've dealt with in the past. Same thing's going to happen in every area of your life. You're going to have spring, summer, winter, fall of every category of your life. And you're going to have them on micro scales and on a large scale. But what I want you to be thinking about and patient with yourself with is thinking about your station in life, the certain season that you're in. I don't expect to be a 10 physically when we're in the first 2 months after having a baby. People are bringing us food all the time. We're kind of stress eating. We're getting bad sleep. Like, everything's kind of wrecked. You're not going to be a 10 at your sleep during that time, unless you're willing to be a 2 emotionally, because you're going to be a really bad husband and father. And so that's the trade-off. A lot of times when you do strive for a 10 in one area, you're going to have a 2 or a 3 in another area. Same thing as if I went in, I could probably make $300,000 a year if I wanted to, and just work all the time and never see my family. So I could be a 10 financially maybe, but I'd be a 2 as a husband and a father on the emotional side. I'd also probably be a 2 physically. There'd be a lot of trade-offs there. And so what you need to think about is, what is your 10? It's not a societal 10. It's not thinking about, your 1 to 10 for each category of your life. Maybe my 10 is not that I'm going to have a six pack. I'm going to be back squatting 500 pounds, deadlifting 600 pounds, and bench pressing 405. That doesn't need to be my 10. My 10 can simply be, I want to be able to rep. This is my actual 10 for physical, and I'm not there, but I want to be able to rep 225 on bench press for 10 reps. And maybe I want to be able to back squat 315 for 10 reps. Like, to me, that's strong. That's strong for my body type, for what I've done in the past. And so that's where I want to get back to. But I don't need to make my 10 something that's going to require me to be in the gym 2 hours a day. So you get to decide what your scale is. I also think you should pray about this and talk with other people, because you're probably going to err on the side of being too hard on yourself or too easy on yourself. You should not make some people will say, oh, well, my 10 physical is I go on 3 1-mile walks a week. It's like, well, that's pretty weak, if we're being honest. You're going to have no physical strength. That's not going to help you with longevity. It's not going to help you to be more active and playing with your kids. You can still very much be overweight walking 3 miles a week. And so you probably need to push yourself more than that if you're in your 20s or 30s. Maybe that's good if you're 85, but it's not good if you're 28 years old. That's not a good kind of prime physical period of your life to be thinking about your fitness. But you have to balance it all, to think about these 6 pillars and weigh it out to say, okay, what does a 10 look like? For me, I want to read at least 2 books a month, and one of them can be an audiobook as well. So that's very easy. Maybe 3 books a month is my 10. But you can think about these different categories and think about, what are your floors and what are your ceilings? What are you giving yourself as your minimums that you should strive for? And what are kind of the maximums, or the 10, or the ideal that you're striving for? Don't let the fact that you're not reaching the ideal discourage you from actually making progress towards your ideal. You still should be striving towards it. You still should have something that you're aiming for, and it should generally be difficult to reach and sustain at that 10 level. But I think about it as that if I'm an 8 across the board, I'm in a really good place. I'm living the excellent life if I'm averaging an 8 across the board. And so if I'm in my professional life, and I'd say my professional life right now, I'm a 9. Maybe financially, I'm an 8 or a 9 right now. Physically, I'm probably a 7. Relationships wise, I'd say I'm probably like a 7 or an 8. You could think mentally, I'm reading a good bit at times. I feel like I'm learning things throughout the week, every week, week over week. So I'd give myself an 8 there. And that's kind of the goal, right? In spiritual life, it ranges from like a 6 to a 9. Some periods it's really, really strong, and other periods it's kind of lacking. But what helps the most with this is not just to do an examination one time. I have what I call my examination of excellence. If you go to seekingexcellence.us and you sign up there, if you sign up for our newsletter, we'll give you access to the examination of excellence. The first email you'll get will be a downloadable with the examination of excellence. Really encourage you to do that. Take some time, 30 minutes, ideally in prayer, ideally in a church, and really sit down and go through that and give yourself your baseline of where you're currently at in your life. This will go through all those different subcategories I talk about in the different pillars, and it'll give you opportunity to give yourself a 1 to 10, see where you're weakest, see where you're strongest, and create some action steps of what you want to do next. This is the first thing I have clients do when they're going through the Excellent Life program, which is my coaching program. So if you're interested in all this stuff, you can also learn more about that. seekingexcellence.us, just hit the coaching tab and you'll learn more about that there. But sign up for the newsletter, you'll get the free downloadable to go through the examination of excellence. That gives you your baseline. Next, after that, what you need to be weekly tracking. And so I have this other weekly tracker, another resource that I utilize, where you can utilize that to go through weekly kind of the key areas of your life, set goals, create prayer intentions for the week, grade yourself 1 to 10 on how you were the previous week, and set goals for the upcoming week. It's a great exercise to do with whether you're dating, engaged, married, or you're going to do it with like older children. These are great habits to get into Sunday afternoons, Monday mornings, whenever is best for you and your family. But to take some time and evaluate where you're at. Do you think it's important for me to know how my wife is doing emotionally, 1 to 10? Is it important for me as a husband to know if my wife is a 2 spiritually? Yes, because I'm the leader of the family. So I can have an idea of where I think she's at, but asking her, my children, where are you at? How are you doing? How are you doing in these areas? Where would you give yourself a grade? Where do you want to improve in these different areas? And how can I help you to do that? That is marquee. That is a fundamental need of a good husband and father, is having the awareness of where people on your team, the group you're leading, are really at, how they see themselves, and where they'd like to see themselves. Not pushing your own vision on them, not pushing your own 10s on your children or on your wife, but helping them to craft and create their own ideals and helping them to figure out ways that they can strive towards them, providing them with the accountability, the encouragement, the coaching that they need along the way. That's, I think, essential to the role of a husband and father. So if you're going to get started with this, if you're actually going to do this and start to live this lifestyle, you have the examination, you start to create your plan forward, you're going to start your weekly tracking, and you're going to start to increase your habits that are striving towards excellence. You're going to need 3 fundamental things. These are what I call the 3 foundations of excellence. So if you have that 10, these are the 3 foundational layers that underlie it. And then I'll talk about the 3 core habits next that I think are really essential to an excellent life. But the 3 foundational things that you need are ownership, intentionality, and courage. So taking ownership, this means you're taking responsibility for where you're at. You can't go through the examination of excellence, blame everybody else for all the reasons why you're not where you want to be in those areas, and then think that you're actually going to make a difference and improve your life. You have to take responsibility for where you are, especially if you're an adult. If you're a middle schooler, I don't know why you're listening to this. You probably don't like seeking excellence. It's probably boring to you. Then maybe you have some reasons to be excused. You're not buying your own groceries, all those sorts of things. If you're a high schooler, you have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more freedom, autonomy. College and beyond, it's on you. It's on you, brother. Like you are the reason why you are where you are. And if you're not willing to accept that, you're not going to be willing or able to make the changes that you need in order to become the man or woman that you feel you're called to be. First thing is ownership and taking responsibility, taking extreme ownership. Great book by Jocko Willink. If you want to read more about ownership, if this is a place you really struggle or you lack and you feel like you're a big victim and you always offload responsibility, I'd encourage you to read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Next is intentionality. So it's one thing to accept, okay, I am the reason that I am the way that I am. My examination of excellence, I look at my scores. I scored really low on 3 pillars. That's okay. I'm looking at it. That's on me. I can accept that. Now I have to create a plan on how I'm going to get going forward. And this a lot of times takes detail. And it doesn't just take detail and time to plan it, but a lot of times we don't give plans and change the time and energy that they need from us, that they demand. So let's take, for example, that I want to start going to the gym more often. It's easy to say, oh, I just need to work out more. I just need to start doing push-ups in my office. Well, when I try to do that, I never do it. I have to go to the gym. I know that I need to go to the gym to exercise. I also know that I need to be walking more throughout the day. I work an office job, and so it's very easy to just be sedentary all day long. That's probably true for many of you that are out there. And so if you think about that, then that means there's a few key things that now I need to go back and be more intentional with. If I'm going to go to the gym, when am I going to go to the gym? I can't just vaguely say, oh, I need to go to the gym more often. No, no, no. I need to say, in this season of my life, when am I going to go to the gym? Now that we've had a second baby, we had this whole like ideal work week we worked up together. I just looked at it up in my office. Me and my wife had set it up. Days that I could go to the gym in the morning, how I'd be home certain evenings, work certain evenings, all that kind of stuff. Now we have a second kid. We got to revisit it. And we just talked about this past week, actually, to sit down and talk about, okay, what mornings are you okay with me being away? I've given it 90 days. So now we're 3 months post baby. Now I think we got to start getting back into our kind of normal routine and looking at our schedule. Had a big like 90-minute planning session myself last night, looking at my schedule, talking about the different things that I need, the different demands that I have, the hours that I need each week to do different things. I have to look and say, okay, when am I going to go to the gym? Usually the best time, the least disruptive time to family life is kind of the 6 to 7:30 range in the morning. And so that's a good time for me to be able to go. Sometimes if I can finish work early, I can go on the way home from work as well. But this gives me some framework to say that's when I'm going to go to the gym. And so I'm going to try to go to the gym 3 times per week, at least 2 mornings, and then a Saturday afternoon during our toddler's nap time, another easy time for me to get out of the house and go to the gym. And so it's like those will be my 3 core times to go to the gym each week. Outside of that, especially on days I'm not going to the gym, I need to be more active in walking. We can walk maybe after dinner as a family. Or I can also try to say, and I did this at my job, say, hey, some of our Zoom calls could probably be done on the phone. Or is it okay if we call into some of these ones where I'm not as needed? I'm not leading the call, I'm not leading the brainstorm, but it's good for me to be aware of what's discussed and I can still contribute here and there. Yes, get that approved. Awesome. Well, that's another 30 to 60 minutes, some days 90 minutes that I'm walking all day long while I'm doing certain one-on-ones with my teammates and team members. Some of my colleagues, we do one-on-ones with some of the other managers and things like that. And we'll go on walks together, either in person or on the phone, and just talk to each other. And I can take notes while I'm walking on Slack and all these kinds of things. And so that gets me active and is getting me walking 10, 12, 13,000 steps on days that I'm not going to the gym. That's been really helpful in me dropping my weight from 245 down to, I think I weighed most recently at 228 because I'm walking more, I'm going to the gym. But this is just one example. And this doesn't even get into diet, nutrition, when am I going to go to sleep, how am I going to sleep better? There's a lot that you can unpack and get into in each single one of these pillars. This is why the coaching program is great, because we go through all of these together and create intentional plans in each of the little subcategories of the pillars, talking about nuance and detailed things like, hey, you need to sleep with your phone across the room because you're ruining your sleep this way. Or maybe you need to start eating better, or you need to cut this out of your budget. So we get into some of the details and nitty gritty on how you can actually live an excellent life, because you almost want to feel like you're over planning your life. It requires great intentionality to be excellent, especially to balance all the demands. I had a coaching call with somebody that I hired. He's a friend and somebody who's really blowing up on social media. And I wanted to talk to him about his kind of social media strategy, and especially on LinkedIn. If you're looking to learn more about LinkedIn, let me know, and I'd be happy to connect you with him. He was awesome, very insightful. And he was talking about how he and his wife, who also knows me, she follows me and sees some of my content too. And they're talking about like, how does he do all these things? Like, he also has 2 kids, he's working a full-time job, and he's creating this content. And I'm like, it's great intentionality. It's because I spent 2 hours trying to create my ideal week for like the next 6 weeks while we're still living in Denver. And so when you're getting to that level of, I need to really think about, all right, how many hours does this demand? How many hours does my job demand? How many hours do I need for gym, reading, prayer time? How many hours do I have for my family? And is that sufficient? What days can I really, utilize that? All of that, it requires a lot of intentionality. And then not only do you need the intentionality to create the plan, but that third foundational piece is your courage. It takes courage to stick to your plan, to work your plan, to overcome the opinions of other people, to overcome the discomfort that you have, to overcome the fears that you have of going to the gym and saying, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm going to use ChatGPT to create a workout plan for me, and I'm going to try to execute it to the best of my ability. I'm going to use these machines, and even though I feel out of shape or overweight or whatever it is, I'm still going to get back in there. Same thing goes for reading, or goes for striving to live a more intellectual life, or starting a side hustle, or asking for a promotion, or whatever the thing is. There's going to be different things along this journey. Going back to confession for the first time in a long time, man, does that take courage. It's really hard to do this. It's really hard to live the excellent life. That's why so many people don't want to do it. That's why it's easy to just get caught up and just say, I'm going to just pick one or two areas, focus on those, and ignore the rest. That's why I think that so many people are drawn to that and that style of living. But it is not what God has for you. It is not what God wants for you. That is not true practical holiness, to say I'm going to just select one of my classes to care about and just fail everything else. All right, so next, let's talk about the 3 core habits to an excellent life. To me, these are prayer, reading, and exercise. And I sort of derive these from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So if you ever read that book, it's a great book. Most of it's really, really insightful. It's kind of long. There's certain parts where it's like, this could be shorter or whatever. I really enjoyed it. It was really fundamental to kind of my personal growth journey. And the 7th habit is what he calls sharpen the saw. And so the first 3 habits are all about kind of internal excellence or greatness, being highly effective, kind of as managing yourself. The next 3 habits are all about kind of your relationships with other people. And then the 7th habit kind of encapsulates all of it in the sharpen the saw mentality. And so he tells the story of somebody who is out hacking at trees, trying to cut down trees, this lumberjack, and he's going to town. The next one is doing the same thing, but he's much, much faster. So the first one's working really hard, but he's cutting a lot less. And he asks the second guy, he says, why are you so much faster than me? How are you doing this so much more efficiently? And he says, well, I take time after every couple of trees and I actually sit down and I sharpen my saw, or I sharpen my axe. And the guy says, you should do that. You should consider doing that. It'll make you a lot faster. And the guy says, no, I can't do it. I don't have time. I have a quota I have to get to. I have to keep cutting trees. I don't have time to sharpen my saw. And I love that story. I think it encapsulates so much of what people really struggle with in today's world, where people are just overly depressed and anxious and just struggling with mental health across the board, overweight, all these different things. And why is it? It's because you don't have these 3 core habits that really shape who you are as a human being and allow you to then be excellent in every area of your life. And so, is it necessarily a certain type of exercise? No. Is reading the only way to really learn and do what I'm shooting for there? No. But I'll talk about these a little bit more deeply. But you're seeing this kind of resurgence in meditation in the secular world, I think, because of the fact that just sitting still for a little while and letting your mind just breathe and rest is really, really important. And so it's even better and more effective, obviously, if you're actually praying and connecting with the one true God in the world. And so when you actually spend time each day in prayer, you're going to be growing towards the best version of yourself. If you're reading and you're not just somebody who says, oh, I graduated from high school, like I never have to read a book again. I never have to learn anything else for the rest of my life. I've graduated. I'm done. If you're cultivating your mind, then you're going to be growing. You're going to have a sharper tool that's helping you to make decisions day in and day out. And then your body influences both of those things as well. It increases your discipline. When you're exercising, you're active, you're just a better person. You're a better version of yourself. That doesn't mean that overweight people or out of shape people can't be good people. But we know that if you're exercising, you're going to grow in discipline. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to be more confident. You're going to be more mentally tough. You're going to make better decisions by and large. I really want to challenge you today to think about what your vision is for your life. What type of man, what type of woman do you want to become? When you think at the end of your life, you think about what your children or your grandchildren are going to say about you, the life that you want to look back on. How are you going to feel? What are you going to think about? Are you going to be filled with regrets? Are you going to be filled with regrets of living in fear, of not pursuing greatness, of not taking risks, of not pushing yourself to see what you were capable of? Part of my story last week was just sharing how when I graduated from Ranger School and I got to stand there in this storied tradition and see this beautiful Ranger School graduation with friends and family in the crowd, seeing all this cool stuff that we had done and hearing about it and getting to yell the Ranger Creed with the other graduates. It was amazing. It was one of the most proud experiences of my entire life. And I got to sit there and think 10 years ago, I was this kid coming from this broken home, experiencing all this trauma of lies and deception, and my oldest brother going to prison for 15 years, and my family, my dad being in and out of my life, and learning that I had new siblings I didn't know about before, new half siblings, and my dad cheating on my mom, and all the domestic violence, you name it. Like I was seeing all kinds of crap, and I was like unsure of where I was going to go or who I was going to become, and if I even had a chance to be successful and have a happy life. And then here I am standing as proud as I could possibly be, having transformed and grown so much closer to God over the last decade. And it's like, man, now here I am, an Army Ranger. I would have never guessed. And it was just like my dream. This is what I hope to become. And there's still so much more to accomplish, so much more to do, but it was a beautiful checkpoint along the way to be able to look back and see, wow, I've actually become something that my younger self would be proud of. And that was part of my big drive to become an infantry officer. When I was in college and I was thinking about, okay, what different branch do I want to go into? What do I want to do in the Army? I thought infantry would be just the best because it was a locked in slot. As long as you didn't really blow your opportunity, more often than not, you're going to get to go to Ranger School. And that was my big dream because I wanted to see if I was capable. I wanted to see, am I actually capable of achieving this, of graduating from this, of enduring this suffering, this training, and becoming somebody that's actually a Ranger qualified Army infantry officer in the 82nd Airborne Division, no less. And so I wanted to see, do I have what it takes? I think that's a question that's written on the heart of every man. Do I have what it takes? So if you're sitting out there and you're overweight, do you have what it takes to lose the weight? If you feel like you're not educated on your faith or things that are really important, your values, do you have what it takes to discipline yourself, to learn about those things and be able to be articulate and intellectually dangerous? Do you have what it takes to actually develop a prayer life, to go back to confession, to become a saintly leader in your home, to become the leader of the faith in your home? Do you have what it takes to do that? Do you have what it takes to make $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 in a single year? Do you have what it takes to push in your profession and get that promotion and get to where you want to be in your career? Do you have what it takes to build side income and to be a provider for your family, to learn about personal finance and make the right decisions and moves and risk and move your money around the way that you need to so that your family would be set up, not just for you, your life in retirement, but for future generations to be able to look back at the things you did and accomplish and be grateful for your sacrifice and hard work? There's always a new horizon. Life is always an adventure. I think that all men and women want to be on an adventure in life. And life with Jesus is that. It is an adventure, but not if you're cutting it off and only experiencing 25% of the adventure that God has planned for you. And so that's what seeking excellence is all about. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there's many different avenues. There's different things that you have to be good at and you're striving to improve on. You might do the examination of excellence and be like, man, I suck at so many different areas. And it's hard, it's discouraging, it's difficult. But what I'm promising you and what my goal is now with seeking excellence is to give you the tools, the resources, the mindset, the thoughts, the education, all of that, the life lessons that you need in order to actually do this, to become the man that God created you to be, to become the husband and father that you actually dream of being, no matter who your dad was, no matter who the father figures in your life were and how they behaved and how they lived their lives. You can be different. You have what it takes. I'm telling you right now, you have what it takes to be a better man. You have what it takes to overcome the fears, the anxieties, the depressions, the past that you've lived and the reputation you've developed for yourself, or even the reputation you've developed within yourself. You have what it takes to overcome that. It's a daunting task. It's a hard journey, but you were made for difficult. You were made for doing things that are hard. You were made for challenge and adversity and overcoming that. And I think that if we're going to actually restore masculinity today, especially within the church, then we need to embrace this. We need more people who want to be great. There are not enough people out there who are actually pursuing greatness, who are actually pursuing practical holiness. We need it now more than ever. There's a resurgence happening in the church. There's a resurgence happening in the world, in faith across the world. I truly believe that. I think this is a great time to be alive. It's a great time to pursue excellence, to seek excellence in every area of your life. And if we stick together, if we actually build this online community, if we build this movement of excellence, we're going to see incredible results and change for our future generations, for our sons and for our grandchildren and all, the generations that are to follow us. We can be the turning point of where masculinity was extremely toxic and then it got extremely soft. And now we can find this virtuous middle where we can be strong, courageous, and bold, but also kind, gentle, loving, and present to our families. I believe that our generation of fathers are going to be the turning point and really show the world what great masculinity can look like. And so if you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also join us at seekingexcellence.locals.com if you want to join our online community. And there you can become a supporter for as little as $10 a month or $100 per year. If you believe in this movement, you want to support the work that we're doing. Again, I encourage you to go to seekingexcellence.us or locals. You'll also find it on both places where you'll be able to sign up for the newsletter and to get access to the examination of excellence. And so if you want that resource, either go to locals or go to our website where you can sign up for the newsletter. You'll get access to it there. So you'll see all of those links in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening today. If you found this helpful, share this with another person in your life who you think would get value out of this episode. The only way we grow right now is by word of mouth and by you sharing the content with other people. And so it means a lot. Again, if you leave reviews on Apple or Spotify, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the bell for notifications, like the video, interact with our content. It means a lot. It really helps us with the algorithm to get the content out there and to reach more people and to help change more lives. So thank you for listening again. Thank you for sharing the podcast. I appreciate you. Shout out to all of our supporters out there who help make this possible. And now it is time for you to go out there and be your best. I'll see you next time.